July 19th, 1984. It was a bright Thursday morning in a small, peaceful town called Brookhaven, deep in the woods of Pennsylvania. Streets were quiet, the birds were singing, and families were just beginning their day. Nobody knew that by nightfall. 6 children, all between the ages of 9 and 13, would completely vanish without a trace. The 6 kids were best friends. They did everything together, rode bikes, played video games, went to school, and shared their secrets. That day, they had planned to meet at the town's old apple orchard, a place they called the secret base. It was where they built forts out of wood, hid treasures, and told ghost stories. Their parents thought it was just innocent fun. But what happened that day turned into the town's darkest nightmare. By evening, when the kids didn't come home, the parents started to worry. At first, they thought maybe the kids had lost track of time. But as night fell, that worry turned into fear. The police were called. Search teams went out. Helicopters flew over the forests. People held candles and walked with flashlights, calling out the kids' names. But there was nothing. No screams, no clothes, no bikes, no footprints. Nothing. The town was shaken. Some thought the children had run away. Others believed something more evil had happened. A few whispered stories about an old cabin deep in the woods, a place some said was cursed. Years passed, the case went cold. Families moved away. The orchard was left abandoned. The once happy laughter of 6 kids was replaced by silence. Time moved on, but the pain never left. Birthdays came and went. Christmas dinners felt empty. Mothers cried quietly in dark bedrooms. Fathers stared out windows, hoping one day their child would walk back through the door. Then, in early 2025, more than 40 years later, something strange happened. A hidden toy, a red, dusty toy robot, was discovered inside the walls of a house being torn down near that old orchard. It was rusty, worn out, but it had something inside. Something nobody could believe. A secret. A clue. When the FBI looked closely, the truth they found would shake the town to its core. Before we go further, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This story is full of mystery, emotion, and shocking truth, and I promise you won't want to miss a single detail. Let's dive in. It was a beautiful summer morning in Brookhaven, Pennsylvania. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and everything felt peaceful. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew each other. Kids played outside freely, and no one locked their doors. It felt like nothing bad could ever happen there. That morning, 6 best friends got ready for an exciting day. Their names were Sarah, Ben, Tommy, Alina, James, and little Cody. They were between 9 and 13 years old. They had been planning all week to meet at the old apple orchard near the edge of town. That place was special to them. It was where they built tree forts, told scary stories, and laughed until the sun went down. They all left their houses around 10 in the morning. Some rode bikes, others walked. A few of them packed snacks. It was supposed to be just another fun summer day. Their parents weren't worried. After all, it was Brookhaven. Nothing ever went wrong there. But that evening, something felt off. One by one, the parents noticed their children hadn't come home. At first, they called neighbors. Maybe the kids were just playing late. But as the sun began to set and no one returned, worry turned into fear. Mothers started calling out from their porches. Fathers jumped into trucks and drove around the town. No one had seen them. By 8 p.m., the police were called. A search team was quickly put together. Its officers, volunteers, and even strangers gathered with flashlights and maps. They searched the orchard, the woods, nearby roads, and empty houses. Helicopters flew overhead, shining lights into the trees. Dogs sniffed the ground for scent trails. The town worked together like a family, but not a single clue was found. There were no footprints, no backpacks, no bikes, no broken branches or signs of a struggle. It was as if the 6 children had simply disappeared into thin air. Panic spread through the town like wildfire. People locked their doors for the first time. Parents held their children a little tighter. School was closed for 2 days. News reporters came from nearby cities. The entire country wanted answers, but none came. Brookhaven would never be the same again. The laughter that once filled the streets was gone. In its place was silence, fear, and heartbreak. The mystery of the missing children had begun, and it would haunt the town for the next 41 years. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Still, there was no news. No answers. No trace of the 6 missing children. The posters faded in the rain. The search teams stopped coming. Reporters left town. But for the families, time stood still. Every morning felt heavy. Every night was filled with tears. The parents didn't just lose their children. They lost their reason to live. Every birthday that came and went was like a cut to the heart. Every empty chair at the dinner table was a reminder that something beautiful was missing. They didn't know if their children were dead or alive. That pain, the pain of not knowing, was the worst kind of torture. Sarah's mother kept her daughter's bedroom exactly the same. The pink curtains still moved with the wind, and the diary on the nightstand remained untouched. Every night, she would sit on Sarah's bed, hoping, maybe, just maybe, she'd hear the door open. Ben's father stopped working. He would spend hours just staring at the swing in their backyard. He had built that swing for Ben with his own hands. Now it swung slowly in the wind, empty, lonely. Little Cody's sister, who was only 5 at the time, would leave a small toy near the old orchard every weekend. It was her way of saying, "I haven't forgotten you." Tommy's parents moved away after the first year. They couldn't take the whispers, the pity, the pain of seeing their son's school friends grow older. While he remained frozen in time, the whole town began to change. At first, people talked about the missing kids every day, but slowly, life moved on for everyone else. New families came. Old neighbors left. The children's names were spoken less and less. Only the families remembered every detail. The sound of their laughter, the way they held their pencils, the warmth of their hugs. The case became cold. The files were packed away in dusty cabinets at the police station. Officers moved on to new jobs. But for the mothers and fathers, the pain never moved. It stayed with them. In their eyes, in their steps, in their quiet prayers every night. What started as a simple summer day had now become one of the most chilling mysteries in America. 6 children, no clues, no suspects, just silence. But deep in the hearts of the parents, hope remained. Small, faint, but still alive. 41 years later, in January of 2025, Brookhaven was a different place. New homes had been built, roads had been repaired, and most people had moved on. For many, the story of the 6 missing children had become an old, painful memory, something people no longer spoke about out loud. But that pain still lived quietly in the hearts of the families who never gave up hope. One cold morning, a construction crew was working just a mile from the old apple orchard. They were tearing down an abandoned house that hadn't been lived in for decades. The windows were broken, the roof was falling in, and the inside was filled with dust and silence. As the workers removed a section of the upstairs wall, something unexpected fell out from behind the wood. It was small, red, and covered in dirt. At first, they thought it was just a broken piece of junk. But then one worker picked it up and wiped it off. It was a toy. A red robot. Faded, rusted, but still whole. The kind of toy you'd expect a child to treasure. Something about it felt strange. One of the workers turned it around and noticed the back had been opened and sealed again with old tape. Curious, they gently peeled it back. Inside the hollow body of the toy was a tiny piece of paper, folded tightly and yellowed with time. When they opened it, their hands began to shake. It was a note, written in messy, shaky handwriting. You could tell it was written by a child. The words were short, but powerful, painful. "We are here. Please help. He won't let us go. There is a trapdoor under the orchard." The letter hit like lightning. The workers showed it to the site manager, who immediately called the police. Within hours, the FBI arrived. They carefully took the toy and the letter. The handwriting was examined, and experts confirmed. It was very likely written by Sarah, one of the missing children. This was the first real clue in over 4 decades. The FBI reopened the case that same night. The files were dusted off. Photos of the 6 children were pulled from archives. Maps of the orchard were studied. After all these years, the voices of those lost kids were finally heard again, through the words of a little girl. Trapped, scared, and still hoping someone would come. That toy, hidden in a wall, had waited 41 years to tell the truth. And now, the truth was ready to be found. The very next morning, after the red toy was found, FBI agents arrived back in Brookhaven. Many of them had never worked on the case before, but they had all read about it. They knew how painful and famous this case had become. Now, with the letter from the toy, they had their first real lead in decades, and they knew they had to follow it with everything they had. The letter mentioned a trapdoor beneath the orchard. That small line, written by a scared child, gave the FBI a direction. They brought in special ground scanning machines that could see what was under the soil without digging. The orchard had changed a lot since 1984. The trees were overgrown, and the old sheds were falling apart. But under all that time and silence, something was waiting. Near the far end of the orchard, where an old wooden shed leaned sideways, the machines picked up a strange shape underground. It didn't match the natural land. It was square, man-made. The agents moved quickly, clearing the brush and gently breaking apart the rotting shed. And there, just beneath the dirt floor, they found it. A wooden trapdoor, weathered and cracked. It was nailed shut. No one had ever seen it before, not even during the original search. With their hearts heavy, the agents carefully pried it open. A deep, cold silence rose from below. They lowered lights down into the dark hole. It wasn't just a small space. It was a hidden basement, built by hand, covered in dust, untouched for years. The air was still, heavy, sad. The agents stepped down slowly, their boots echoing off the concrete floor. What they saw stopped them in their tracks. Small toys were scattered across the ground. Faded drawings were pinned to the walls. Happy faces, stick figures, suns, and stars. Old blankets were folded in the corners. The walls had tiny scratches, like small fingers had tried to claw their way out. Then, in the far corner, behind a loose brick, something even worse was found. Bones. Tiny bones. Tests would later confirm what the agents already knew in their hearts. They had found the remains of the 6 missing children. Tears filled the eyes of even the strongest investigators. The children had been trapped there. They had waited. They had hoped someone would come, but no one ever did. This place, this basement, had been their final prison. The most painful truth of all was clear. They had not been taken far. They had been beneath the orchard the entire time. Right under the place they loved most, and for over 40 years they had been waiting to be found. After the bones of the 6 children were found, the FBI turned all their attention to one question. Who built the trapdoor? Who did this? It didn't take long for the investigators to look at old maps and property records from the 1980s. The land near the orchard, including the now abandoned house where the red toy was found, had once belonged to a man named Carl Whitmore. Carl wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He was a quiet man who kept to himself. He had worked as a janitor at the town S elementary school from 1975 to 1985. That meant he had seen all 6 kids, Sarah, Ben, Tommy, Alina, James, and Cody, every day. He knew their names, their habits, their routines. He had never done anything that raised suspicion. He was the kind of person people barely noticed, always in the background, always quiet. But that silence hid something dark. As the FBI dug deeper, they learned that Carl had no close family. He lived alone, never married, no children. Neighbors remembered him as strange but harmless. He walked his dog every night. He waved, but never talked. And one day in 1986, 2 years after the children disappeared, he left town and was never seen again. No one reported him missing. No one asked questions. It was like he simply vanished. But the more investigators studied the basement under the orchard, the clearer it became. Carl had built it. He had slowly dug it out over time using tools from his janitor job. He lined the walls with cement. He placed toys and blankets inside. It wasn't just a hiding place. It was a trap. He used his position at the school and the children's trust to lure them there. Maybe he promised them something fun. Maybe he said he built them a secret fort. And one by one, he led them into that dark hole. Then he closed the door behind them. No one knows exactly how long the kids survived in that room. But the note hidden in the red toy tells us they were alive long enough to hope, long enough to be scared, long enough for one of them, Sarah, most likely, to write a final message and hide it, praying that one day someone would find it. Carl Whitmore escaped before anyone ever looked in his direction. He fooled the whole town. He disappeared before the truth could catch up to him. Some believe he changed his name and moved to another state. Others think he may have died alone, far from the place where he caused so much pain. But the truth is this: the quiet man that no one noticed was a monster hiding in plain sight. It took weeks for the FBI to finish the DNA testing, but when the results came back, there was no doubt. The bones found under the orchard belonged to Sarah, Ben, Tommy, Alina, James, and little Cody. The news hit the town like a wave. For some, it was a moment of silence. For others, it was a moment of tears. The mystery that had haunted Brookhaven for over 40 years was finally solved. But it wasn't the ending anyone had hoped for. The families, who had waited for decades with empty arms and broken hearts, finally had answers. They finally knew what had happened. But the truth was so painful, it felt like losing their children all over again. Ben's mother held his baby photo to her chest and wept. Sarah's father, now old and gray, sat quietly at the edge of the orchard, staring into the trees. Lena's older brother, who had once walked her to school every day, visited the site and left her favorite book under a tree. They had their children back, not alive, not whole, but found. The town came together like it hadn't in years. People who had moved away returned. Former classmates of the 6 children stood together in tears, now adults, remembering childhood faces that never had a chance to grow up. A memorial was built near the apple orchard, in the very place where the kids had spent their last day. 6 small bronze statues were placed in a circle, holding hands. Each statue was made to look like one of the missing children. They smiled, just like they used to, frozen in time. Around them, flowers were planted. A wooden bench was placed nearby where parents could sit, pray, and remember. At the center of the memorial, under a glass case, was the red toy robot. The very one that had held Sarah's final message. The toy that had waited in silence. The toy that had carried the voices of the lost. That little toy, once forgotten and hidden in a wall, had become a symbol of hope, truth, and love. It reminded the world that even the smallest voice matters. That even when years pass and everyone forgets, one message, one brave act, can bring justice, even after death. The story of the 6 children no longer ends in silence. It ends in light, in remembrance, in peace. And because of one tiny red toy, their story will never be forgotten. Thank you for staying with me through this heartbreaking story. The disappearance of 6 innocent children left a small town in silence for over 4 decades. But in the end, it was a forgotten toy, hidden in a wall that gave them a voice and gave their families the answers they had been praying for. Sometimes, justice comes late. Sometimes, it comes quietly. But when it does, it speaks louder than we ever imagined. Let this story be a reminder that no one is ever truly forgotten, that even the smallest clue can change everything, and that hope, no matter how small, should never die. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive and helps honor the memories of those who were lost. We share these stories not just to remember, but to make sure they're never repeated. Till next time, stay safe, stay aware, and always listen closely, because sometimes the truth is hiding where you least expect it.